What is good, everyone? Welcome to the channel. My name is Paul. I make videos about Japanese society, life, and culture from the viewpoint of a long-term foreign resident. I've been in Japan for 20 years, and today's topic is topics that aren't generally talked about or brought up on Japanese YouTube channels. And basically, that's one of the things I try to do here on the channel, which is talk about things that no one else tends to bring up. Small parts of Japanese culture that if you live here, you're going to know them. You're going to be aware of these things if you live here, of course, but if you've just been a tourist or you are planning on moving here, these are things that might be interesting to you and that you might find useful. The first is the culture of kaitori, or resale shops. See, I didn't really realize that Japan was such a mecca for resale. If you've been here as a tourist, you've probably come across shops like Book Off or Hard Off. Book Off is where you can buy used books, media, DVDs, CDs, that sort of thing, gaming consoles, and that sort of thing. Akihabara is basically a whole district of resale shops for games and other media. Hard Off is a nationwide store that sells home goods and like gardening supplies and bicycles and whatever you can think of that goes around the home. It's actually a great place to hit up when you first move here and you don't want a whole bunch of brand new expensive stuff. You can get really good deals on old used goods. Highly recommend that if you're first moving here. And they're fun to browse even if you're a tourist, to be perfectly honest. Especially because in Japan, people take really good care of their things. And these kaitori resale shops won't purchase something if it's not in a decent condition. This is not Goodwill. This is not the Salvation Army. Things are going to be in good condition and you'll be able to find pretty good deals for the most part. I was really struck by this when I returned to the States and I was going through my old bedroom and I was thinking, I have these collectibles and these books and these things that I wouldn't mind selling. They've got some value to them. I don't want to throw them away, and realized that there really wasn't any place to do it. The culture in America is to have a garage sale. So you take all of your goods and you put them out on your lawn or on your driveway, and you put a sign out that says garage sale 2 blocks this way, and people come to your house and browse your things and take anything that they might want to buy. But in Japan, there is no culture of garage sale. And to be honest, Japanese are pretty private about their home residences. So I think the idea of putting your home goods out on your lawn and having random strangers come and check them out is pretty abhorrent to most people here. So the garage sale isn't a thing. You could pay money to have a little spot or a booth at a flea market, but if you don't want to spend the money to make money off of your goods, the best or the next best thing I would say is to go to one of the many kaitori shops. They buy everything from brand bags to gold and silver to alcohol. Some of the used or the resale good shops here will have unopened bottles of cognac and whiskey and other things, which is really interesting. Sometimes really expensive bottles of wine, although I don't think I'd ever buy wine from a resale shop because who knows how it was stored in its first home. Might have been stored in sunlight or something and the wine's all bad. But yeah, just about anything that has value, you can find a place to offload it and make a little bit of money on the side. In America, we pretty much have eBay or a garage sale. That's about your only options, or so it seems. What should you do with that money that you've made from selling your valuable goods to one of those shops? Well, another topic that doesn't get talked about much is the various types of gambling that exist in Japan. Now, I'm not condoning gambling and I'm not recommending anyone do gambling, but I think it's an interesting topic and there's some interesting things to talk about culturally, as well as some misconceptions and misperceptions that people might have. And one of the ones that has the most of those misinterpretations and misconceptions is pachinko. Pachinko is the one type of loophole gambling that I have done. In fact, I just made a video this week about how to play pachinko. It's a short 9-minute or so video where I just talk about how to play and how it works. I'll link that below if you are in Japan as a tourist or you live here and you decide, I'd like to give it a try sometime. It's generally maligned. I mean, it's not looked at as being very, high class by Japanese people, obviously. And I would say 98% of the foreign population looks down their nose at pachinko. It's been written about negatively by a lot of famous authors about Japan, like Alex Kerr and Donald Keene have had not so great things to say about it. And I can understand why, because it can often seem like a bit of a blight on the Japanese cityscape with this blazing neon and loud music playing. And if you walk by and the doors open, there's this cacophony of sound. And in the old days, a billow of cigarette smoke that would come out of those doors. Cigarette smoke is gone, by the way. They are all non-smoking now. And actually the sound has gone down considerably as well, because now the machines allow the players to set the volume. So you can tone down the volume and those places aren't as loud as they used to be. What I feel is the misconception about pachinko is that it's often seen as this kind of outlier, this thing that is like an annoying part of life in Japan for people who aren't interested in it. But I would argue that it is part of Japanese culture. It is a part of Japanese modern culture every bit as much as anime or maid cafes or Nintendo. It's just part of the landscape, developed largely post-war period. The name comes from the sound of the balls falling through the machine. Pachi, 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 so pachinko. That's where the name comes from. They used to be upright cabinets that took skill. You had to be able to kind of shoot the balls into what they're called attackers, and you would potentially win money if you were skillful enough to get them into the right attackers at the right time. Nowadays, though, it's pretty much just a glorified slot machine with pachinko component. It's not based on skill anymore. It's just about getting spins of the slot wheel, and you might win jackpots. A misconception about pachinko is that it's tied to antisocial forces or mafia. That was true to some extent decades ago, but the police cracked down on that connection, and pachinko has been basically free of mob influence for quite a number of years now. So if you think that it's contributing to organized crime, no, not these days. In fact, they're much more aligned with the police these days. The famous rumor that I've heard on more than one occasion is that police pensions are tied to pachinko businesses. So police are kind of supportive of the industry. Another thing I've often heard is that there are ties to North Korea, that they're owned by Koreans and then the money gets money laundered back to North Korea. I've never seen this information from a credible source that really made me convinced that it's a true thing. I mean, the laws about money transfers and, Japan takes a very strict stance on anything having to do with North Korea. So it's hard to imagine that they're able, in an already police scrutinized business, they're able to just take their profits and send them to Kim Jong-un up in the north. I don't know. I don't see that as a very high likelihood. The other forms of legal gambling in Japan are racing. There's 4 types of racing that you can bet on. There is a Japan Racing Association for Horses, or JRA. You'll see commercials for this on TV. It's readily advertised. You can go to the course and watch the racing and bet on the horses, and there are off-track betting sites. I have never bet on horses. I've never been to a horse race, so I don't really know how it works. If you do, and you can share something in the comments, please comment below. The other 3 types of racing are boat racing, bicycle racing, and motorcycle racing. And the boat racing, at least, does get a lot of commercial time on TV. You'll see these dynamite boat race commercials that come up on TV. One other type of gambling, although some people don't refer to it as gambling, but the one that is not really looked down upon in Japanese society and lots of ordinary people involve themselves with, is the takarakuji, or lottery. So the lottery does exist. It's run by the Japanese government. They run numbers games and scratch games all year round, but the ones that are particularly popular are the jumbo takarakuji. They are the ones with the big jackpots, and they happen 4 times a year. There's a fall, spring, summer jumbo, but the most popular, the most famous is the Nenmatsu or New Year's jumbo, which is when a lot of people line up at the kiosks to buy a ticket and hope that on New Year's Day, when the numbers come out in the newspaper or you can check on your smartphone, that you've won and you've gotten one of the big jackpots. Now, I say big jackpot with a caveat. It really is kind of a small jackpot if you compare it to lotteries in the US like Mega Millions or Powerball, where you can have tens or hundreds of millions of dollars in the jackpot. But in Japan, you win about $1 million to $5 million. So it's 300 yen per ticket. So you usually buy a pack of 10, so 3,000 yen for 10 tickets. And the payout is 1 to 5 million or so. So it's not cheaper than buying a lottery ticket in the States, really. But and the odds aren't necessarily any better, but what you win is actually far, far less if you were to win. There are 2 other important differences, though, about the takarakuji in Japan. The first is, if you win, you are not liable for taxes. So you will not be charged taxes for your winnings. Now, if you're not a resident, I don't know what your eligibility is for playing or collecting on winnings or tax liability. I don't know any of that. So if you are a tourist or you're thinking you might want to play, you'll have to look into that yourself, because I really have no idea. But if you're a resident and you win, you don't have a tax liability. The other difference that is worthy mentioning is that you can remain anonymous as a winner. In America, you have to basically do the publicity thing. You have to stand there and get handed the giant check, and then all of your quote-unquote friends come out of the woodwork to say, hey, I have this project I could really use a loan for, and da-da-da-da. Like, everyone's gonna know that you won. However, in Japan, you don't have to do that. You can collect your lottery winnings and be completely anonymous. You don't have to report it to the media or to anyone. By the way, I am walking through Yokosuka today, which is the town south of Yokohama. I'm here today because I had some business to attend to, but I don't know if this goes anywhere. Like, I'm really unfamiliar with this neighborhood, so yeah, I've walked up to a gate. There's no outlet here. Well, that's kind of interesting, though. One of the things I like about this channel is that it gets me exploring random places. So, as long as we're on the topic of things that are kind of frowned on by society, like gambling is not often seen as, a really high-class thing to do, let's talk about the so-called low-class or delinquent class, or what is commonly referred to as Yankee, or other, there's other terms that can be used, but Yankee is the one that kind of came into use. I believe it originated in Osaka, and it generally referred to people who were dressing in a very American style and were dyeing their hair blonde, that sort of thing. It was a really strong movement through the 80s and 90s, early 2000s, which that of course has changed. How it manifests changes over time as the culture changes, but essentially it refers to kind of the ones who are troublemakers in school, the ones who ride around motorbikes, get involved in petty crime, disturbing the peace, that kind of thing. There's a bunch of offshoots that you've probably heard of, like gyaru and bosuzoku, bike gangs. Those types of things are associated with that culture. There was long this image that Yankee would be like sort of on a escalator to getting into antisocial forces, into organized crime. That's not really true. I think that was, people look at the sort of delinquent behavior and assume that that's the path that they're on, but I would say that's not accurate. I wouldn't say that's accurate. From what I know of the culture and what I've read, that's not accurate. Most Yankee are not going to become recruited by the mafia. That's not how it works. Another common part of the image of Yankee fashion is shaved eyebrows, and if they're still in school, they will alter their school uniform a lot. The Yankee kids at the junior high school where I taught would all, once they were third graders, they'd all have hoodies popping out of the top of their gakuran, the black uniform that they were supposed to wear, and they would sag their pants and have these, giant belts that they would wear, which didn't serve any purpose because they were sagging their pants. Yankee can be men or women and of any age, as I mentioned. And actually, it's opportune that I'm walking in Yokosuka today because another fashion accessory that was often associated with Yankee culture is the skajan, which is a baseball-style silk jacket that basically originated here in Yokosuka and was popularized here, and you can still buy in a lot of shops around this town. But they are really beautiful, and maybe someday I'll spring for one. But yeah, that was associated with the movement, often referred to as a subculture of Japan. And its heyday was probably through the early 2000s before it's largely died out. But obviously there's going to be delinquents in society in any decade, so Yankee is still a term that is used, and while the fashion and the look may change, there's still that image of that type of person that persists. One other culture that flies under the radar in Japan, mostly because tourists aren't interested in doing this, and a lot of people who live here, unless they live close to the ocean, don't necessarily participate, but that is beach culture in Japan. And I feel I have to bring this up because I lived in Hayama for a number of years, which is just next to Shonan. It's a huge area of beautiful beaches. Now I know if you're Australian and you're watching this, you're thinking, Japanese beach culture? Come on, mate. But seriously, it's not like Australian beach culture where they take their beaches very seriously down under. But Japanese beach culture is thriving. Japanese love going to umi, the ocean side, during the summer. And surf culture, surf shops, skateboarding along the Enoshima sidewalks, and there's a big skate park over there. It's one of the places where you see all the tan-toned surfer types. It's one of those things where I found that beach people, quote unquote beach people, are pretty much the same everywhere in the world. You'll find them wearing flip-flops or thongs, as they say in Australia, in the middle of winter. They'll be decked out with a vest and like a woolen hat, but they still got sandals on their feet. You'll see a lot of tattoos, not because they're associated with any kind of gang or anything, but honestly, that surprised me after living up in the mountains and where people are covered up and not wearing bathing suits. I kind of was surprised, given the attitude or image of tattoos in Japan, how many Japanese actually have tattoos, or at least how many beach people have tattoos. Just go to Zushi Beach or Enoshima or any of those beaches in Shonan, and the people that are there, you're going to find bleach blonde hair, tan bodies, and tattoos for whatever reason. It seems to be part of the culture. In the summertime, beach huts will spring up, places where you can go and get food, go and get drinks. There'll be music. Zushi Beach, close to where I used to live, would have a fireworks festival, and they had a film festival every summer where you could go after dark and they'd show films on a big screen set right up there on the beach. And it's packed in the summertime. If you head down more towards Miura way, there's some beautiful beaches along there, like Morito Kaigan in Hayama is beautiful. Great place for a barbecue or to hang out with a family and paddle in the water. Beach culture also, it features a lot of Hawaiian themes because Japan and the Japanese love Hawaii, and there's so many connections there. You'll find lots of Hawaiian style shops, Hawaiian style cafes, and well, I would say that as I mentioned, like Australians wouldn't consider Japanese beach culture to be on par with Australia. It's the same. Like Shonan is not Hawaii, and the water off of Japan there is not as beautiful as the water of the Hawaiian Islands. So let's not get it wrong in that sense. But Japan loves Hawaii so much that the Hawaiian influence along its beaches is really palpable. So if you come to Japan, you want to take up surfing, it's going to be probably easier than trying to surf in Hawaii because it's generally a lot more gentle waves out there, and there are people who do it year-round because while it does get cold, it's not ridiculous in the winter. If you have a wetsuit, there's a lot of wetsuit surfers out there. Plenty of scuba and snorkeling opportunities. Again, you might be surprised. You might think, oh, it's not a tropical ocean, so what can you actually see? But down Myoto Way, there are some lovely places where you can see all kinds of fish, sea life, octopus, etc. So yeah, snorkeling and scuba is possible. I know it's probably not on the top of lists of tourists as something they plan on doing when they visit Japan, but honestly, you know, if you come and you stay down in the southern part of Kanagawa Prefecture or down at the bottom of Izu, if you want to go to that peninsula, you can stay at a traditional Japanese inn and get beautiful food at that inn and hot springs bath at night and then head out to the beach during the day. I think that's good living. Okay. Apparently this light is never going to change, so I'm just going to end the video here, and thank you very much for watching. If there's a topic that you think should be covered that no one else ever talks about, let me know and I will bring it up. This was just meant to be a survey video, so if you have any greater particular interest in any of the things I talked about, by all means look it up. You can ask questions in the comment section below. And yeah, thanks for watching this video. I hope to catch you on the next one. Like and subscribe if that's your thing. Helps the channel grow and survive and helps me to continue making these videos. I do have a Patreon and an Instagram, which will both be linked below if you want to join up. But at any rate, thanks for watching this particular video, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.